Merci. better our future, our children. Lord, be with us, lead us and guide us, direct us. In Jesus' holy name we pray. We say amen and thank God. We have an agenda before us with 5 items. What's the take of this board on this agenda?
Chair.
Yes.
I second.
It's been moved by Elder Dean and seconded by Ms. Jones that this board with 5 items be adopted. All those in favor use the sign of voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it, the motion has been carried. Item 3, work session presentation.
Good evening, Board Chair, Board Vice Chair, Board members. As you know, this is our first Board of Education work session. And today, we have no agenda items for approval. Rather, an opportunity to share our results story to date with you as we rise up. In many ways, I feel like we are still operating 3 separate school districts. Holmes County Public School, Durant Public Schools, and our newly created Holmes County Consolidated School District. As we are still cleaning up MDE's audit reports from both Holmes and Durant districts, all while we work to ensure that the newly consolidated school district is Mississippi's #1 school district. And yes, that includes MS, Mississippi Science and Math School. We're coming. We are all excited here in Holmes County Consolidated School District for this opportunity to make this district #1. And let me be the first to say, it will happen. In my Mississippi vernacular, it's ripe for the picking. And I believe that it will happen. So this evening, we want to share what is happening in our district, instructionally and operationally. And we strongly encourage you, board members, to ask questions to your heart's content until there's no doubt of our trajectory to achieving success for our children. We will begin with our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Peoples, as she will share where our dollars come from, where we are expending our dollars, and MDE audit corrections from previous district. You'll then hear from our Chief of Staff, Ms. Antoine. She will be sharing information around staffing, creating a paperless work environment, and MDE's audit corrections. You'll even hear from our Chief of Student Support Services, Dr. Griffin, as she shares student data around attendance, discipline, MDE special ed audits, and our plans for our new intervention academy, which we will be bringing to you for consideration or recommendation for a name change. And last but not least, we will hear from our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Williams, as she breaks down the data in student achievement in all instructional disciplines, federal programs, what we are doing to ensure that our teachers and students alike are ready academically, as well as MDE's audit corrections in instructional education. So without further ado, we'll get started and we'll just move right along through the presentation. We'll get started with Ms. Peoples.
I don't like coming behind Dr. Henderson. Good evening, Board President.
Good evening.
Honorable board members and superintendent. We're going to start with the finance piece. And I just wanted to give you a history of the consolidation. I know you all lived through it, but on July 1, Holmes County School District and Durant Public School District consolidated and became one. Holmes County Consolidated School District. That's where we start. And then on July 2nd, that was our first day of business, even though Dr. Henderson had been here and he was working on things. But for Holmes County Consolidated School District, July 2nd was the first day of business. Also, the leadership began on that day making decisions for the new school district. Decisions that impacted operations of both districts, like Dr. Henderson said, and the old districts and then the new districts. On July 3rd, there was a board meeting, and it was approved that we would use Bank Plus for our bank institution, and it would have all of the consolidated bank accounts. And then also on that same day, you all approved for Dr. Henderson and myself to become signatories on those bank accounts. Therefore, we were able to get started, get moving, and doing the things that we needed to do. And these were the revenue sources that we had to do those things. We have state revenue, which is the formula money. We have federal and state grants, ad valorem taxes, transportation fees, interest from our bank accounts, and investment. We have one. Leases and miscellaneous revenue. Of the total, $33,399,000, 56% of the revenues come from our state revenue. So that's why attendance is so important to us, and just making sure that we are complying with NDE at all times. Our federal state grants, 20% comes from there. Almost 19% comes from the ad valorem taxes, small amount from transportation fees, less than 10% interest from banks and 16th section, about 26%, leases, 2.8, and miscellaneous revenue, 1.01. And miscellaneous revenue has a lot of things in it. So if you want detail about that, just ask me and that you want the detail. But it includes
Ms. Peoples, would you explain the federal and state grants? Break that out for me.
Okay. The federal and state grants include all the titles, Title I, Title II, Title III. Is it in 4 and 5 or 4 and 6? Okay, and 4 and 5. And then, and also Carl Perkins. And then we have a few other state grants that are related to the state of Mississippi only. The title grants are about 3.2. And then the rest of it is this grants from the state. And they include, let's see if I can give some examples. There's something there for 16th section, excuse me. And there are a few things that are restricted that only we can spend in certain ways. Special ed money, different things like that. Dr. Henderson, you had a question? Okay. Okay. So are there any questions about the federal and state grants? No? Okay. All right. What about any of the revenue sources? But what I was getting ready to say was that the miscellaneous revenue includes a lot of things like gate fees from my athletic events. The gate fees, and then other revenue things that we do, some donations, when individuals make donations, but they're all just small amounts that are $25,000 here, $30,000 there, and so that really don't back up to, like you can see, miscellaneous revenue is just 1.8%. Now this is our expenditure comparison. The 2018 July through October is a combined amount for Durant and Holmes County. And then the 2019 is Holmes County consolidated. And you can see that with our personnel services, we spent less than the two districts combined. So the benefits follow the salaries. And then we have professional services and technology services. Gas, tires, tags, oil, but the main focus is really the textbooks. And there was a need, we had an adoption, which I'll talk about later, for science, and then a renewal. The science adoption was for 3rd through 12th grade. The property, that includes purchases of certain equipment like laptops, computers, furniture and fixtures, and we spent less there. Other expenses, those are dues and fees, judgments, interest, debt service payments. And then other fund uses, that's what we use to do our transfer ins and out. And you can see that we're not where we were this time last year, which is a good thing. So we only spent $37,195 compared to the $246. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair. Oh, you mentioned something about tuition to other schools. I believe you mentioned it in your supplies cost.
No, it was in, not supplies, but other purchase services. And that's if we pay another school for, if we have students that attend another school for whatever reason, then we pay them tuition. And I'm not sure about
So let me explain that. Actually, what we ensure, we ask the board to deny those students going to another district so that we will not have to pay that tuition. Okay?
That's correct, but we did pay something to a private school. I think that was in Title I.
Yes, that's separate from
Okay, but it goes up into that.
Okay.
Into that. And the amount is small dollar amount, $7,000. So. Okay. I'm not sure, Mr. Norman, did that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So I was just trying to make sure, was that the special education?
We do pay a special education proportionate share for students who receive speech and language services at private schools and have eligibility. It's mandated by federal government.
So that would be.
So that would fall in.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So we've made some investments.
I'm sorry. Let's go back to that slide.
Okay.
Yes. So just let me just quickly recap those totals there. As you can see, from July to October, we just want to make sure you see what we are spending. You see what we spent in 2018, then you see what we spent in 2019. Nearly $2 million less than the previous year. So we are in good physical health at this time. And we will come to you with this data every quarter. So you will see where we are. All right? Thank you.
Okay. So we have made investments, an assessment was done, and so there was a new book adoption for science, like I mentioned earlier, for 3rd through 12th grades. And then there were renewals for math and reading. And that's where most of that is where the money was spent as far as textbooks are concerned. Then there's been professional development for everyone in the district. We've had PBIS, iReady training, data management, and training on software. And I believe there's been some training in classroom management, and I'm mistaken or dreaming. I'm right. So we have had training of all sorts to help us, to help the leadership, to help the students, and so therefore we believe that we will not be an F district this year. And then there's been rebranding. You can see the signs on the building, our logos, the buses, the names have changed, the floor mats, and just in the professional development, all of this is just to rebrand the school district so that everyone knows that we are a top-notch school district.
Oh, we will be.
Oh, okay. That I said are. That we will be.
Go ahead and speak it.
Yeah, I'm a speaker. Well, you know, if we say something out of line, you check us. You know, so we have to claim it. Okay. Now, but as far as the fund balance is concerned, the goal is to continue to do things to increase our fund balance. And we're doing that by reviewing everything that the district does. All of our contracts, we're trying to change or do a paradigm change. We're trying to think outside the box and not stay with, this is what we've always been done. Because it's kind of like with old technology. Old technology was expensive. We can buy new technology cheaper. And so we're looking at that with our copies and printers. We want to make that district-wide as opposed to every campus having someone different. Because when we look at those costs they deal, if we can just have one provider, and we're looking into that, we have several people come in and look at it, provide us with a service, help us monitor. Are we making too many color copies? Are we making large number of copies on a machine that's not capable of that instead of sending them to the print shop? So we just have to change all of that. It's going to be a little different, but it's going to be more efficient as far as cost and time. And then we're looking at how we purchasing supplies. We use the normal things like Quill, Office Depot, but now we're starting to use Amazon and just look at different ways that we can cut costs, because every penny counts. And so we're counting those pennies. And then now, we're looking at, as far as the budget is concerned, we want to start the budget process in February. We want everybody to talk about it because with this budget, with the consolidation, there were a couple of things that may not have been thought out all the way through. We made sure we handled salaries and wages, but what about supplies? We didn't think about what Durant was bringing, because we brought in Durant students, but we didn't think about the cost of small things, you know. We didn't think about what services they were using. The fact that this year there are going to be 2 audits that we have to pay for, Holmes County and Durant, but we only budgeted for 1. So it was things like that. So when we start budgeting, this year we want to include everything, we want to talk about everything, we don't want to miss out on anything. So that's the plan. And with the thought in mind that we're going to increase fund balance. So it's going to have to be a balance there. We know we're going to have to take on some additional expenditures, but we're going to be smart about it, and we plan to increase the fund balance. So that's my challenge. With the audit, the MDE audit, there were some findings as far as finance is concerned, and they were related to fixed assets. So it was found that we did not identify federal participation when we recorded fixed assets, like if title paid for 50% and then district maintenance paid for the other percent, that wasn't identified. Also, what was not identified in our fixed asset records was how was this asset going to be used. We knew the location, but we really didn't know what it was going to be used for. You could tell from the description, a printer. Okay, so we have a printer of different figures. But is it a printer for counselors? Is it a printer for, the classroom? The use wasn't identified. There were no written procedures for internal control or recording of the assets. We didn't have proof that an annual inventory of fixed assets was done, and there was no proof other than individual paper, sheets of paper, that the disposal of fixed assets were done as required. We will fix all of this, and it will be done by January 31st, 2019. Okay, thank you. Any questions at all?
Well, as far as, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as far as being compliant, are you basically going to each school, doing inventory, and then making sure you're doing a check and balance to become compliant?
Yes, that's what we're going to have to do.
Situation?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we're going to have to document it. And we're going to have in our procedures, how we plan to execute that.
Okay.
So it's just a lot of things involved in this.
Thank you.
On the procedures for proper disposure of fixed assets, is it that the consolidated district did not have this plan, but it's possible that the individual schools did have it?
No, the individual schools did not have it.
Durant didn't have it?
No. Because what they audited, it wasn't even the consolidated. It wasn't even consolidated at that time.
Right, let me clean that one up. Actually, that audit was cited Holmes, not Durant. It cited Durant on personnel, human resources, but it cited Holmes and Durant for for personnel, but it also cited Holmes for fixed assets. Just Holmes, not Durant.
Because it's a procedure, they had one.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that Holmes had the same thing, but it just wasn't found. That's the problem. So we don't know what happened to it or whatever, but it just wasn't found.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, when Holmes as well as Durant districts consolidated into Holmes Consolidated District, what kind of debt services were there that was transferred with those districts? I know Holmes had a QZAB bond that was.
Yeah, and we still have that, and we're still
So
planning
what are
on
the
it.
percentages on it? Did Durant have any that was transferred?
Yeah, Duran had one bond that is supposed to be paid off in 2020.
What's the
You want to know what the balance is?
Just a percent.
Approximately.
Just a percent.
I don't have a percentage, but it's, the bond amount is around, that's due, or that we will have to pay is about $900,000. That's my cue. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, one of the things that Human Resources had to deal with is the MDE audit findings, where 28 citations were made in personnel, including 26 teachers who had a certificate not on file, which just means that they're not certified teachers, and 2 teachers who were not properly certified to teach where they were teaching. So that means they were teaching out of the certificated area without an out-of-field statement or an emergency certificate. Teachers are allowed to teach out of their area, but they need to have the proper certification to do that, and they didn't have it in this case. So we've addressed these deficiencies, and we've done that by helping 5 teachers gain certification, placing the 2 teachers who were out of field into an area that's consistent with their licensure. 8 of the teachers on that list are no longer employed with the district, but we still have 13 teachers whose certificates are not on file, and we are working to assist those teachers to obtain certification. Okay, so this is our current status. We have 473 employees, 2 vacancies. One of those is a librarian, which is a specialized position, and we cannot place a substitute in a position for librarian. 47% of our employees are teachers. We have 224 teachers. 1/3 of them are without standard licenses, but we do have quite a few with 1-year licenses that we've managed to obtain this year. Okay, at the first of this month, we've leveled our resources by closing classes with low class sizes. That involved moving 6 teachers to either other grades or buildings to even out those class sizes. 2 teachers moved into certified assignments because they had gained certificates and were not in their areas, so we moved them to the correct area. 2 teaching assistants were moved to equalize our assets, and our special education slots are fully staffed. Leveling classrooms should occur annually, usually around the end of the first grading period. So it would be standard operational procedure to level classrooms each year.
How many students are you looking at to level for each classroom? What number are you looking for? Is there a particular number?
There is a number. The state provides a number, and it depends on the grade. The younger grades, fewer kids in a classroom. The upper grades, I think it starts about grade 4 or 5, you can have 30 kids in a classroom. Below that, it's 27, 24, 22, so on.
I understand about the leveling of the classroom, but what type of impact is that having on our student-teacher ratio?
Well, we're following the state's guidelines, so we're well within teacher-student ratios. You know, accepted. And we even compared our Mississippi ratios to a couple of other states, and they're all very similar. So the main responsibility for human resources is to attract and hire the best possible candidates, engage our employees with skills training and professional development, and afford employees opportunities for growth so that we retain our best employees. You know, the national statistic is that 44% of teachers within the first 5 years leave the profession. And so that's pretty daunting. And that's kind of my goal now is to make a big difference and not have us have 44% leaving the profession. And so we're going to, you know, focus on our professional development and developing our employees so that they engage with our district and want to stay. So the former district had most of these areas of human resources operationally, but they were scattered and separated out by multiple divisions and multiple people, very little integration and almost no electronic communication between those divisions. Reports had to be pulled from isolated sources, which were sometimes self-created by staff. So we are now consolidating and managing all of these elements. And last board meeting, you approved the purchase of Frontline, which is completely integrated and will help all of these areas. All of that data will always be available to whoever needs to pull those reports without having to go and search in, you know, Miss So-and-so's cabinet where she hides, you know, her list or whatever. So we're really excited about that. On the horizon, these are our goals. We want a fully certified staff. We want a paperless environment, one-stop shop where all the data is available in one place. We will conduct and publish a compensation study so that we know and our employees know that we are paying standard, what's the right word? So that we're paying comparably to other areas in around us and that match our demographics. So everyone can feel confident that they understand what our pay scale is and why it is and how it compares to the neighboring districts. We're going to redefine our staffing and recruitment process. Priority is certification because we want to work with all of our divisions and organizations to increase certification rates. MDE has certification support. There are other organizations throughout Mississippi that offer free certification, preparation, test prep. We're going to work with all of these groups to get our people certified. We will be using a performance management system through Frontline to manage everyone's professional development and growth and document it. And of course, we will have high professional standards for everyone. We plan an aggressive recruiting and marketing campaign. Dr. Henderson wants billboards in Jackson and surrounding areas to attract highly qualified teachers, and we will be attending several university job fairs. As far as our outreach goes, we have expanded the resources to include 4 TV stations and 4 radio stations, which actually broadcast to 7 different outlets, which is why that second number is there. We communicate with 6 newspapers, 7 mayors. We have 13 university contacts, 120 Holmes County businesses, and 76 Holmes County churches with whom we communicate. We have expanded to include multiple avenues of communication. We provide news items and press releases to all of the TV, radio stations, and newspapers on a regular basis. I think you might have noticed that if you attended the Doretha Drain Wiley Fine Arts Magnet Academy dedication a couple weeks ago. We had multiple outlets represented at that event, and they've covered it really nicely. And next month, WJTV is going to come visit the high school and do a feature on the magnet school for their Cool Schools segment. This concludes my report. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a question around retention, teacher retention and recruitment. How proactive are we going to be with trying to attract some teachers like right now? Are we doing something at the moment, or are we waiting till the beginning of next year?
Well, we do have positions posted in multiple places, not just on our website. And I did get a hit just this past week on a position that was posted on Indeed.com, so we know that people see us there. And we're maximizing our own resources. Many principals and other employees are Facebook announcing positions, if you will. And sometimes, you know, it helps if somebody knows somebody, they're interested to come here because their friend or their relative is already here.
And additionally, we have graduates who will be coming out in December. We are working with the local colleges and universities to look at those graduates. We're actually building partnerships with the local schools, trying to get those graduates. But as I stated earlier to you all, it's not just the education department that we're looking at. We are going into departments such as math, science, psychology, social work. Those two particularly for special ed teachers. The foreign languages department, you have to think outside of the box. And that's what we're doing to attract teachers. But the one thing that will really attract and retain teachers is not money. It is all about how we treat people. That's what's critical in recruitment. How we treat people to keep them here. There have been districts I've worked at where folks have gone, left the district, but they came back. And when I asked why, it was because of how we treat them, how we prepare them, put them in the pipeline for growth in our system. That's what we're going to do to retain the best, the brightest, most cooperative individuals.
Question. Chairman.
Yes.
Have we considered putting together a survey of the current teaching staff to look at those that may be eligible for retirement next year to see what are their anticipations? Are they going to retire? Are they willing to come back? Have we did a survey of any teachers?
Very good
on whether or not they're going to come back. And that way it gets you ahead of the game. If you know that 50% from the survey say, I'm not coming back to Holmes County Consolidated School District, then quite naturally you know you're going to need 50% vacancy, have 50% vacancy for next year.
Very good question.
And we will be doing that. It's a little early in the year, but we will be doing that. We know what, we know what.
Actually, never too early,
Never
right?
too early.
Because they can actually retire as early as December.
I have a question. As far as dealing with your outreach, you guys already have a relationship with the universities, correct?
That's correct.
And then with the churches, are newsletters or anything going to go out to the different churches to kind of make sure, because that's, I guess, one of the ways we can get the news out as far as the 76 churches in the community.
That's correct. Yes, we will have a brochure going out to the churches, but we prepare this brochure once a year, once a semester, and it will be going out in December, early December.
And what is your main drawing emphasis in getting people to come into our system?
Well, it's what any teacher needs. They need to feel needed, they need to feel wanted, they need to feel that they're making a difference. So that translates to everyone, teachers, teaching assistants, people who support education in the building, from the custodians to the bus drivers to the cafeteria workers. It's all about being needed and being appreciated for what you contribute.
I have one more question. With the development and all the leadership, I guess, workshops that you have, is this something that's covered for us to let our teachers know that they are important? Is that a part of the curriculum or the strategy with the leadership programs that you guys have?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I listened to you talk about your recruitment plan of going and get math teachers and science teachers and all those. And that's good to get them here, but once we get them here, what do we have in place to train them for the class?
I think Dr. Williams is going to cover a lot of that later, so I don't want to step on that, but we have a lot of ongoing professional development all year long. We have a whole calendar of things that it's already been published, of things that we know we're offering. And we'll address other things as they come up.
One last question. Have we considered a teacher of the month, or do we program or something, so do we have something already for recognition?
Yes.
So it's not waiting until the end of the year when we recognize the beginning.
Well, usually Teacher of the Month happens at the building level, but we do have Teacher of the Year program in place as well.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, we just received that paperwork actually this week from the state, so we will be moving in that direction.
Greetings, good evening.
Good evening.
President Anderson, esteemed members of the board, our superintendent. I come to you from Student Support Services this evening. Under the umbrella of Student Support Services, we have many different programs and divisions. Some are like special education, discipline, PBIS, alternative education, restorative practices, counseling, college and career readiness. But today I'm going to talk about a few of them, and then I'm going to show you how they all support teaching and learning, how we're here to remove some of the roadblocks so that teachers can teach, administrators can be instructional leaders, and we can just support what our vision is in the district, and that's to raise student achievement. So what you see in front of you is some discipline data. And it's actually the number of instructional days that we lost to out-of-school suspensions at each school. And so if you look at it, we go from one school only having 2 days that kids lost. I mean, actually, 2 kids had a day apiece. And then we see another school with 228 days. We do need to consider that some of these schools are elementary schools. The one with the larger amount of days are high schools. But we share the data with administrators. They've seen their discipline data more than once. They're looking at it, they track it, and we're trying to put things in place that are proactive, that keep out-of-school suspensions down. And that's some of the things that I want to talk to you about. In a recent professional development, we asked principals to come up with alternatives to out-of-school suspension and alternatives to in-school suspension. So some of the proactive disciplinary practices that were discussed were reduction of out-of-school suspension, and at the district level, we have called for a moratorium on days exceeding 5. So if you need to suspend a child for more than 5 days, and we do understand that there are some infractions that are outliers. And so we know that principals may have to, but they need to contact central office. We will have a process in place soon where they have an electronic form that they fill out to tell the reason why they have to give more than 5 days. And then we will approve or disapprove. But that way we'll know what's happening and we'll know why there's an excess of days. Another thing is to utilize parental conferences. Oh, yes,
Just a question.
Yes, Ms. Yes, ma'am.
Is it that you do not have a policy in place that states the amount of days under disciplinary actions?
So we do not have a district-wide discipline matrix. Actually, this morning I met with someone to start to devise a disciplinary matrix, and I talked to the superintendent about it. And so you'll be hearing about that soon because it's something that we will be working on. I had a long meeting, was it 2 weeks ago, with all the administrators at the high school. It's something that they're asking for, and it's definitely something that we want to work with administration on.
So in the past, it has been basically wherever the principal feels, or it's just been a fly-by-day type thing. I mean, there hasn't been anything in place before now in regards to the days, or?
Not that I have seen.
Okay.
I don't have anything concrete that says if a child does X, they get so many days.
Okay.
And so if that's what you're asking,
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking,
Exactly.
in regards to that, but I think.
Yeah, listen, so,
No, Mr. Horton was about to say something, I thought you had an answer.
no, well, I was going to ask you a question.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm hearing is that Holmes County Consolidated School District does not have disciplinary policy approved.
that gives an infraction and days for each infraction. Holmes County Consolidated School District does not have that.
Question is there a student handbook that speaks to them?
We do have a student handbook that speaks to this. But it has been to the discretion of the principal or administrator administering the.
That is correct.
So then this is something that you're going to produce to
Yes.
make it better for the future?
Yes, and it's not a unilateral production. It is something that as a district, we are going to put in place as a consolidated.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because this is something that we have been talking about for years. You know, you have these type of infractions in place, but what will determine what student A will get for doing certain things?
Right,
So
and there are parameters there in the student handbook, but it's quite ambiguous.
Right.
And so
We need to.
we need something a little more.
Right. Right. Yes, sir.
Question. So what I'm hearing, again, if I get in a fight and there's no limit, no certain infraction that's imposed on me for fighting versus me doing, skipping a class.
Right. So, I mean, as an administrator, they have the discretion to give 5 days for that fight and 5 days for insubordination, class skipping. Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms.
I guess that's a hard one there when you talk about discipline and the amount of days that you give the child or each child. There were something in Durant, I can recall, that really outlined how many days you get for this and how many days you get for that, and maybe just want to look at it and maybe revise it. Because there is one for the Durant had.
Mr. President, may I see our principals about to fall out around this conversation. So I'm going to ask Dr. Peterson to come forward and clean this up. Dr. Peterson.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm still using, last year, Holmes County had a very detailed, in our student handbook, a discipline ladder. And it spelled out specifically, ladder 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes from skipping class, insubordination, from cursing, all the way up to what, level 5, for fighting or destroying school property or doing something like that. So because we used it last year, the discretion, to ask the discretion part, whereas Board Member Horton asked, or Ms. Winters asked if someone's skipping class or doing something, I think in there may have been ISD or something like that, or 1 day in opposed to a fight. So we're using that model still to kind of spell out that part about the suspension.
It's not consistent across all schools.
Question, Mr. Chief.
Where is that?
In the student handbook and district handbook as well. We have.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's supposed to be, and the reason I say that, because this consolidated board, at the time of approving policies, it went on record that Holmes County Consolidated School District would utilize the policy that Holmes County School District had. And those would be the policies that would be followed, and that they would be amended if need be. It would be brought forward to make any necessary changes or amendments. But that is the policy that was supposed to be followed.
So let me give you an example.
Let me, excuse me. Yes, you're right, board member. You did adopt Holmes County policies. We are using Holmes County policies. So just give us an opportunity, because obviously this is not clear, we're muddying the water. So give us an opportunity to research what you're asking, and then we'll come back and address it, all right? And to make sure that we are doing, and that information is in the handbook, as Dr. Peterson stated.
Just a comment. There's no shedding nowhere, because you clearly said that it's just not being consistent across the board. It's there, but all the schools are not utilizing the same thing.
And that's what I was about to say. In conducting disciplinary review hearings, you see children with very similar infractions given very different days. And so, I mean, very different days. And some students not suspended at all and still come to disciplinary review hearings. So this is consistent. And so it may not be at SB Marshall School, but we do see it. Yes.
And so that's what she's sharing. She's trying to be transparent with what we're seeing across the board. That's what she's trying to share.
And I thank you, Dr. Williams, for that, because that's something that, Dr. Griffin, I'm sorry, that has been a problem for a long time. And even though Mr. Horton was right when he said that we adopted Holmes County policy, we did do that, but for a long time it wasn't transparent in Holmes County policies that of how like fighting and cursing a teacher out and other infractions was broken down, and how many days should be given for this, that, or the other. It was done by the principal, what they feel. So I agree with you 100% that we need to look further into that and establish more boundaries. Yes.
I think the policy really were that you could give so many days for it, but it did not say that you gave so many. And that's where the different principles discretion came in. Some might be given 5 days, some might not give anything. But it said what it could be.
And consider more than one student in the same infraction or in the same fight may not get the same amount of days. When they come to disciplinary review hearing, it does cause some questions. And so they're also working on creating PBIS action plans where.
Just one last.
Yes, sir.
Did we look at the numbers from when we put these numbers at October, was it up until October of this year?
This is October.
What were the numbers compared to last year's numbers? And that may determine whether there's a lot of inconsistency this year.
We can look at both. We did look at what principals were reporting, and some people were saying that they did have their numbers down, and some were saying because we did away with corporal punishment, they felt that their numbers were up. So that's why we want to put in proactive, because we're not going to go backwards and go back to corporal punishment. So we want to put things in place and think outside of the box to give ideas and things too, so that we don't rely upon always. Another thing is creating a PBIS action plan. Certain things in a PBIS action plan, principals are creating, some things should be done or managed in class, and others will require office referral. And so that will count down on the disciplinary things. And the use of behavior intervention plans in MTSS and RTI in that process. We're seeing a lot of people are creating behavior contracts for students who they're looking at in the MTSS RTI process. And that's a multi-tiered process that gives support to students before they're referred for special education services. And so we're seeing a lot more of that. If you look at the next slide, It talks about attendance, and this is attendance in number of days. And for Holmes County Central High School, it's 551 days out of school for students. For William Dean, it's at 328. And so they're commensurate with the size of the schools. These are 5 days or more unexcused. As we know, many students are not just out of school just because. Some parents just did not have good school history themselves. And so school is not an easy thing for parents all the time. We wanted to create an attendance protocol that schools could follow, and many of them were already following similar protocols, but we wanted to create a district-wide protocol. And so we created a flow chart. It contains contacts, letters that go home at different levels. First is a positive contact from the teacher, and it says, this child's been out of school or tardy so many days. And then it goes up to the MTSS clerk, reaching out after they see so many days. The next letter comes from the counselor. The next one comes from the principal. We created letter templates. Once the principal sees a pattern, they can send this to central office, to student support services office, and a letter would come from us to the parent. It's a proactive way that we're not waiting for our attendance officer to go out and make contact. It's something that starts at the school at a very base level, at a very friendly level. They don't have to use the letter templates that are there, but they're there just in case. There's also an attendance contract as part of the attendance protocol for very young children. If they have a contract with their principal, with their mom sitting right there, that they get up and come to school and be on time. And also a lesson, a PBIS lesson that's taught school-wide. That maybe it's a competition or something where you're rewarded for attendance. Yes, ma'am.
The high school, the attendance there is very high, 500 a month. My question would be, have you, like you say, you're going to look into why this is happening with the attendance? Are you looking at the bus routes? Because just my understanding is that you have pickup sites over in Durant, the children that's coming to Central. And on rainy days, are you looking at a high attendance?
We have not looked at trends yet.
Okay.
You know, we just started looking at this as of early this month. So, no, we have not, but it's something that we will look into.
Good question.
And,
Yes.
Are we no longer using robocalling? That when a
no,
child
the
is
schools
out,
are using
that
robocall.
call does go out to the home?
Yes.
Know that your
Now,
child-
one thing that in speaking to administrators, that one thing that they acknowledge is that phone numbers change frequently. Phone numbers change all the time. And so sometimes by the time Mr. Thomas writes the child up and the paperwork comes here for a disciplinary review hearing, I can't even call that parent, because in a day or two, their number has changed. So that, it's just an added support there.
Question. In those instances or in those circumstances where we cannot reach them by phone, what's the alternative to reaching them?
When I try to reach a parent and I can't, I usually call, Mr. King has been vital in delivering things, and SR.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Of course, I spoke of special education falling under student support services. Federally, we have what's called the SPP APR. It's the State Performance Plan Annual Performance Report. Every public school in the United States of America follows about 17 indicators. And states usually choose which ones they're going to monitor, but 14 are usually mandatory. When the state looked at our indicators, we did not meet, this is Holmes County, indicator 4 for discipline. 4A is suspensions greater than 10 days. And 4B is not following the practices and policies and procedures that go along with suspending a child who has a special ed eligibility 10 or more days. One of the things that they require you to do is a self-review. And so this was from last spring. At the time that we crossed over, as I was coming on in July and the outgoing team was going out, we were in the middle of a review. So much of the review was done in the months of June and July. So under 2 teams. And we looked at the disciplinary practices, and we had to write up a corrective action plan, things that we are going to do to correct this. And what we ended up doing is we have certain trainings that need to be done with administration on discipline under special education. And that's something that's been ongoing. We started at leadership conference. We had another training a few days ago, and it's something that will be ongoing, and it's something that we document for MD. Under that same audit, indicator 7 was something that we didn't meet. And that indicator involves the preschool students who have been found eligible in our district. If you know, under child fine, ages 3 to 21, because we're a county school district, we are obligated to do child fine and fine children who may have disabilities. Well, when they are found eligible, they take what's called the BDI, the Developmental Inventory. Right before their 6th birthday, they take a post-test, and that's given by usually the speech and language pathologist. This determines whether or not a child has grown socially, emotionally, and academic. But it's more of a social, emotional kind of assessment. What they're saying is not that the children did not show growth, but that we did not document that post-testing was done within 3 to 6 months prior to the 6th birthday. So it was more on the practices and procedures. And so under our corrective action plan after that audit, we came up with ways to document and then send out something to the speech and language pathologist reminding them that they have to double back, find that child, because that child may not be serviced in the Holmes County Consolidated School District. If the child may even have gone to private school, but you still have to find that child and test that child if they're in Holmes County. If they leave the district, then you can document that. So we put procedures in place under the cap. And then the last one is, as a result of a parent complaint with Durant Elementary School, the district was found, it failed to ensure free and appropriate public education. And what it was an evaluation that they didn't offer an independent evaluation after the parent disagreed with the eligibility. At that time, the state mandated that we do certain trainings with staff. And Ms. Banks has worked with the staff at Durant Elementary School, and it's to train the staff on what to do when a parent disagrees with an eligibility and what the timeline is in offering an independent evaluation. So those are the 3 corrective action plans that we were under special education, and it's ongoing. Actually, the last one was supposed to finish up today, and they canceled it, and we're going to reconvene on Monday. Okay. So how does this translate to success, since we're like on the way there? We have to consider a couple of things. We have more students now that we're combined than we had last year. Am I right? Okay. And despite being a larger district, with a reduction in disciplinary review hearings, reduction in sending students to the Learning Center, at this time of year last year, we had about 25 students at the Learning Center. This year, we have right at about 13 students at the Learning Center. Making a way for a transition into the Intervention Academy. making a way to reduce those discipline numbers there so that we can deal with our overage population, so we can deal with the students who need credit recovery. And so right now we're kind of transitioning, and those numbers kind of reflect that. And then if you look at special ed referrals, and just what they're doing in their MTSS RTI with discipline contracts, with behavior contracts, we are not getting as many referrals for special ed. This time last year, we had about 23 referrals for special education. This time this year, it's about 15. And that's from the district, not Head Start. We're not including our Head Start referrals because they're huge. But we're talking about district-wide. They're doing more interventions in the school so that we don't have those. Any questions?
Oh, I have a question. The Intervention Academy, is that underway or how?
Yes, ma'am, it's underway. Right now, we are waiting for our software program to start. We have been in talks with Mr. Allen, and it's underway. By January 1st of this year.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting on.
Yes, we have a deadline, and we will definitely be up and running. Yes.
We will be up and running January 1 or for the new semester.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Anderson and members of the board. I hope that you have lots of questions for me because I can talk about teaching and learning all night long. I'm looking at my principals to see if they're melting yet. So, in the slides that you'll see over the next probably 20 or so is information for us to make decisions about teaching and learning. I don't want us to get discouraged by what we may see about how students are performing right now. If anyone's been to the doctor, you know that the doctor or nurse will take a temperature check usually. We'll check your blood pressure. My favorite, jumping on the scale. And they use a lot of different measures in order to prescribe something for you, prescribe a treatment plan. So think about this as our first temperature check as to where our students are this year. And when you start to think about the way the data is presented to you, I want you to know that our principals and teachers have been digging into a much larger and wider and more deep data set than you'll see tonight. So you'll see some aggregated data at the school level mostly, some by grade level, but no, just in the past day and a half, our principals have been looking at their own data set, this thick, this wide, based on how students are doing right now. Also looking at some data from last year to make some decisions about some strategies that they'll use, creating an action plan so that we can continue to get better. So one way we're trying to get better as a district in the academics department is by aligning things. So we're aligning our curriculum, we're aligning our curriculum materials, the way we pace out the year in each of our grade levels and contents. And then we're also standardizing the way we report data, the way we assess students, and check their temperature throughout the year. So we're going to use some of the same slides over the course of the year so that you can begin to see the different temperature checks at different times in the year. And you will see improvement in what you see from students throughout this year. So the first couple of slides, I want to just take a step back to the overall district performance as measured by our end of the year state test. And as you see from this slide, this is the 2-year trend data for each of our 700-point schools, and those are our elementary schools. So if you'll notice, we have one C school, that's Goodman Pickens, or one school that's indicated as a C right now. One school that's currently designated as a 5, a D, sorry. and 2 schools at the 700-point schools that are currently designated as an F school. The state, between those 2 years, had an adjustment in the amount of points it took to make a B, C, D, and F. So you'll notice that some schools might have gone down a little bit or up a little bit, but their grade kind of stayed the same. We're hoping that this stabilizes next year so that when we think about the reporting for next year, we can count on this grade book being the one that we can count on to measure our growth next year according to the state's end-of-year assessments. The second slide is 1,000-point schools. So these are schools that have high school grades in them. And so you'll see the scores for Holmes Central and for Durant and for the district overall. So a little bit of information about what goes into these accountability ratings. At the 700-point schools, we're looking at achievement in ELA, in English Language Arts, and math, and in science. And then they also count the participation rate of students, how many students took the end-of-year test. In the 1,000-point schools, they have many more ways to get to that 1,000 points, all of which are an accumulation of education from pre-K to 12. So we're looking at math, ELA, U.S. History, Algebra 1, Biology 1. We're also looking at our overall graduation rate, a 4-year cohort rate. We're looking at acceleration, so thinking about those students who are, have dual enrollment or dual credit courses, or who are taking advanced placement courses and how well they're doing in those courses. We also take into account ACT for all 11th grade students. So that's our college and career readiness score. And then we also look at participation rate for those high school students. I will say that we have had conversations with MDE concerning Durant in particular, and the designation of Durant as an F school remains on the state report card. However, for this coming year, that designation without high school, Durant would have scored a D, according to the way the scores were calculated last year. And there's a requirement that schools that are designated as an F have to report to the state board in November. And Durant's been excused from that because we were able to show that they would have had a D had they only been, and now that they are, only a K through 8 school. They're also not in school improvement because they are now designated as a K through 8 school as well. Yes, ma'am.
I know Holmes Central, you have a 555 as a C and a 555 as a D.
Yes.
Can you explain it, please?
I wish I could thoroughly, and I will try to get more information to you about that. The state of Mississippi changed the rating scale. It's a percentile rank. So when the scores come out, they scale the schools from the lowest to the highest, and they make cut scores. And so that changed between those 2 years. And so the 555 and 17 is not the same 555 and 18. And that's why I was saying I hope that they keep the same scale so that we can depend on some of the temperature checks that we take throughout the year to tell us how we'll perform on that scale next year. So currently, there are 3 schools that are in some type of school improvement status. And you might have heard some reporting before about priority and focus schools. Those designations have changed with the Every Child, Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, which took the place of NCLB, No Child Left Behind. So our current schools that are in school improvement status are William Dean Elementary School, and they're designated as a Comprehensive Support and Improvement School, CSI. And those are schools that are identified in the lowest 5% of public schools in the state of Mississippi. That's the highest level of support for schools offered by the state. The two schools that are in ATSI have previously been at one of the higher levels, but have moved out of those higher levels to a lower level of support, and that's additional targeted support and improvement, and that's SB Marshall and William Sullivan. And those are schools that are identified with at least one student group that has scored in the lowest 5% of Title I schools in the state. These schools receive extra monies, extra school improvement grant monies that are used to help improve schools and give them some flexibility in terms of funding in order to support teaching and learning in these schools. So the next couple of sections I'll go by content areas. So you'll see in language, in English language arts and social studies, for each of the content areas, we're using iReady as our, the way that we're going to take most of our temperature checks this year. So we have a beginning diagnostic that was administered in September of this year. And this is the beginning diagnostic. We give 3 diagnostics this year, one now, one in the middle of the year, and one at the end of the year. And as you can see across the district, students who are on level are less than 20%. Some schools a little higher or lower than others. But right now, the temperature check that we took in September concerning students reading on grade level is that less than 20% of our students district-wide are reading on grade level. You see also that we have quite a few students that are way below, in other words, 2 or more grade levels below where they should be in reading. And so those are most critical students that we have to focus on, particularly through our intervention processes through MTSS. I also want to give you a caveat about Holmes Central. This is the first year they've implemented iReady. So with any new implementation, it takes a while to get started with that. So we've worked in some ways that we can improve the participation rate for students at the high school level to participate in iReady, so that we can get some information about how our students are reading at the high school level. Any initial questions about iReady or the diagnostic?
I read it at Durant. Is it the first year for them also?
It is the first year for Durant, and what we've tried to do is give some extra support there. And at the beginning of the year, this is usually, a diagnostic is usually done near the end of August rather than the middle of September where we started. So we had to integrate some data systems to make sure that all students at Durant could take the diagnostic, but they're all on board now. And it is the first full year of implementation for Durant. All right, did you have a question? The kindergarten readiness test is a state-sponsored test that uses another reading platform to take information across the state about how students in pre-K and kindergarten are reading. And so you saw an initial report about MCAS at the beginning of the year. You won't see this slide or information about MCAS again until the end of the year. And that's a statewide assessment that's given at the beginning and then again at the end of the year. You will, however, see iReady data throughout our time reporting this year. Right now we're looking at a high percentage of our students coming into school at very low literacy rates, so early emergent readers, meaning they don't have very many literacy skills, vocabulary is low, and are not quite ready to read. The highest percentage of probable readers was at William Sullivan, and I think I celebrated that when I showed you these scores a few months ago. And one of our hypotheses about why that is because there's a pre-K program there, and more students are prepared to enter kindergarten with some beginning literacy skills. So I'll go into the subject.
So since William Sullivan has the pre-K kindergarten program, what are we gonna do about the other schools?
So we did have a pre-K program at William Dean this year. We've also and sought your permission to apply for a pre-K grant. So the state has a pre-K collaborative grant. We've applied for and waiting for an answer from the state so that we can have a pre-K class in every school.
Yes.
Also, just to add, the Head Start no longer has an academic curriculum. We mostly focus on social skills. So that's part of some of that downside that when Head Start transitioned from doing, well, actually teaching, they just do social skills now. So you're getting a lot of kids coming into the school system from Head Start.
So probably some shaking heads and principals. So one, the pre-K collaborative, we have partnership with the Head Start centers. And in our application was to bring in Head Start classrooms to our buildings. However, we will be the partner that leads concerning professional development. And there's a specific curriculum that the Department of Education recommends for pre-K that we'll be using in those programs. All right, so we're going to move up to the big kids now. And subject area testing program in English language arts will look at English 2 and U.S. history. And the information that you have here is from our test bank system called ELS. And these results are based on the 9 weeks assessment that was given just recently as part of the overall grade that a student would get. The test is made up of items that are pulled directly from our pacing guide up until this point. So the teachers in each content level and grade level have a pacing guide that helps us guarantee that students are receiving instruction that's aligned from classroom to classroom. So based on that pacing guide, the 9 weeks assessment was built by our ELA coordinator. And this is the score for that first 9 weeks assessment. So there is some alignment that's happening and happening again in some professional development on using the pacing guides, using the curricular materials to make sure that we're on pace. So how this information correlates to the state test, the students who are proficient are the ones that are scoring at the highest level on the state test, 4s and 5s. The students who are passing on this test are scoring about a 3 on the state test. And those scoring at basic and minimal are scoring at the lowest levels, 1 or 2 on the state test. This is a temperature check that we'll take after each 9 weeks period. And so it's important, and we're providing support, ongoing support to teachers to keep them on pace, so that when this assessment comes at the end of the 9 weeks, we will know how students are doing leading up to the state test. These are our results in U.S. history, and the same applies in terms of the rates that you see there correlating to the state test. I will say one thing about U.S. history. We're in a new piloting new social studies standards. And so teachers are working with older curricular materials and piloting new social studies standards. And at some point this year, we're forming a committee of teachers to help us look at curricular materials related to social studies and the new standards. So we'll be coming before you to ask for permission to purchase materials that match the new standards in social studies across the board.
Mr. Chairman, for the students, thinking back with English English as well as history. As far as the students that are performing at basic or minimum, do they have a separate type of tutoring or remedial type classes or coursework that they're given to try to help build up that proficiency in English and history or whatever subject they're having issues in?
We are drafting right now an extended learning opportunities matrix of ways we're going to provide after-school tutoring, Saturday tutoring, summer school for students. Within the school, we have a certified intervention specialist now and others that support teachers and students who are behind. But I do want to say that we are examining our funding sources to get some after-school and extended hour learning going on at all schools.
Do you foresee this being something that's mandatory for the student, or, I mean, you know, I'm just saying.
It's hard to mandate after-hour tutoring as such. We can make it very compelling to students, and I think most students will want help if they understand the ramifications of not doing well on our state test. And so those that take advantage will do well. But it is hard to mandate something like that, but we can make it compelling. There are no further questions about English language arts. I'll move on to math and science. All right, so again, you'll see this slide during these presentations. This is iReady for Math. So this is the beginning of the year diagnostic and mathematics. And across the board, again, you'll see quite low levels of students who are on level in math. Ranges from very low single digits to nearing 20%. A very high percentage of students scoring below grade level. So in the state's reporting, or the end of the year test in science, our 5th and 8th graders take a state test. And so for these presentations, we'll make sure that you have information throughout the year on 5th and 8th grade science. And so the 5th and 8th grade science use the same test bank system, ELS, to take at the end of the 9 weeks. And it's also based on that pacing guide. So any information presented to students in that first 9 weeks is a part of the 9 weeks assessment and the test bank that's standardized across the district. So those are the results you're seeing for 5th and 8th grade science, sorry. This is 8th grade science, where we have 8th grade in those 3 schools. The science standards are new. You heard Ms. Peoples talk about a new adoption in science. So we're in an adoption year, new curricular materials, but also new, more rigorous standards in science. So we're monitoring this very carefully throughout the year so that we won't be surprised when the state test comes at the end of the year. We'll know all along how our students are doing according to the standards. For the high school, the subject area testing program includes Algebra 1 and Biology 1. So currently, at our first 9 weeks check for Algebra 1, we have about 16% of students who are at the proficient level, 18% at passing, and about 65 at basic and minimal. And at biology, you see the proficiency levels there. So one way we're investing in retaining teachers, also improving teaching and learning in the classroom is through professional development. And so throughout our times with you, we'll come back to you with information about how our professional development is going. So there are informal professional developments happening all the time. Our coordinators in student support services and academics area are in schools and with teachers a lot. Another way we help develop folks in the leadership team is through our leadership team meetings, which are primarily professional development sessions. And so we'll give you some data on how people are reacting to those leadership team meetings. And this is based on information we have up to date in October for the leadership team meetings. Another big push for professional development this year is the second year of implementation of iReady and Ready. And Ready is the math and the ELA curriculum that kindergarten through 8th grade teachers use to teach ELA and math. And so we've started with new teachers. We've had some one session with leaders using the beginning of the year data, diagnostic data. And throughout the year, teachers and leaders will have on-site, job-embedded professional development on using the data from iReady and then also the curricular materials from Ready, reading, and math. And these are some of the reactions to professional development so far for iReady. So I also did just want to give you a snapshot of an estimate in the informal professional learning offered so far this year, and that's the number of professional development opportunities that have been afforded to teachers or others throughout the year. We'll keep this slide updated, so you'll notice that you'll see more bars in comparison between, especially for our major concerns such as Ready and iReady, and then those leadership professional development opportunities. So are there any questions about professional development? And I didn't ask about any questions for math or science. So I'm going to switch gears for just a moment to federal programs. And I dream about federal programs way too much. So we have approximately $3.2 million that's awarded to the district from the federal government based on the free and reduced lunch price, students that are qualified for free and reduced lunch. And so I wanted to point out just first that there is a federal programs audit that was a result of a monitoring visit in April. And the citation letter was received in the district in September, and there were 43 compliance citations of non-compliance. And this is out of approximately 68 indicators. So we were in non-compliance in many, many areas. What we're doing to address this proactively is to create a manual that helps us stay in compliance. And this manual will be presented to the Department of Education, and it outlines how we're going to do things from now on. And that begins with professional development of all staff who are in receipt, handle, manage, look at anything that has to do with federal programs. And we will maintain our compliance by following that manual and following the procedures that are in that manual. We're also looking at using technology to help us with compliance. So one example of that, and Ms. Peoples mentioned fixed assets. One of the ways that we can keep up with our fixed assets is through technology. So we're pursuing a resource manager so that we can put asset tags on all materials, such as laptops, tablets, things that we need to count that were purchased with federal money, any money, and that includes our textbooks as well, so that we can be good stewards of the monies that have been entrusted to us to teach students. So overall, with the federal programs budget, Out of that $3.2 million, a big proportion, about 66%, is spent on salaries and benefits. And those are employees that work in our schools, such as our lab facilitators, our teachers' assistants, our deans of instruction, certified intervention specialists, coordinators in our departments. I'll forget some titles, so I shouldn't have started naming them. Yes, teachers' assistants. So we've invested a lot of money from our federal budget on actual boots on the ground in schools to help students. Some monies are spent, we have a small proportion on extended learning opportunities, but I do want to say that that will be augmented when we receive the 21st Century Learning Grant. And we also have the school improvement monies from schools that are in school improvement that can help raise the percentage of after-school opportunities for students as well. There is some money there for contractual services for PD, so that includes conferences, it includes contracts we have, say with Curriculum Associates to provide PD and Ready and iReady, and those types of things. So finally, just to give you a deep dive into Title I. So Title I monies are allocated by students, and the only way we get Title I money is if a student has qualified for free or reduced lunch. So the information we have on this chart shows the free or reduced lunch rate for each school and the actual student count. And these numbers are taken directly from child nutrition. Those are the best numbers we have to count who is actually receiving free or reduced lunch, and that's how we get monies into the system through Title I. Titles 2, 4, and 5 are titles that follow about the same rules. Title I, however, we have to allocate the monies according to the students and the percentage rate for those free and reduced lunch students. So I wanted to show you this so that you can see the differences in allocations between schools. And because we have a lot of our monies allocated in salaries and benefits, the differences in schools, the money has to follow the students. So there occasionally are times where we have to level our resource, in this case mostly set from salaries and benefits, according to needs in schools. So if we are making changes to allocations of people, it's primarily because the students are there, and therefore we have to, according to federal law, allocate those monies to those schools according to their free and reduced lunch rate and the number of students they have. So there are some differences there. What I can say is that Holmes County Central's rate is quite low, and that happens in high schools a lot because students will not apply for free or reduced lunch because they're teenagers and their peers mean a lot to them, and it might be an embarrassing process for them. There are ways that we can encourage our students to apply, and we have a strategy for getting those numbers up so that we can make sure that the high school gets a fair share of monies, because we know many of those are the same families that are attending other schools, and we likely have a higher rate and thus could bring more money to bear to serve students at the high school. So there's a discrepancy there, but we have a strategy for getting that rate higher.
This question though, do you have many seniors that are doing half days?
Half days in the school? Not that I know of. I can get some information for you about that and get back to you. So there's just one further slide about technology solutions, and all of my colleagues, I think, have talked a little bit about using technology to leverage our efficiency and accountability. So you heard me talk about some of the testing items or assessment tools that we're currently using. I mentioned that we're looking at a resource manager so that we can be better stewards of the textbooks and other materials that we receive into the district. Also using technology in order to learn more about, or help students learn more about what they want to do in life, and that's major clarity. There's a requirement by the state for students to make a plan concerning their learning, and so that's a technology tool that's going to help us be more efficient to get that information and more accountable to the state for those plans. And then also the Odyssey-ware, we're making a change from Odyssey-ware to Edgenuity in order to help students who are credit or course deficient begin to catch up. And that's going to be the major software or major teaching tool that we have at the Intervention Academy to ensure that we are moving students toward graduation. Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. And now we're at item number 4. We need to have a discussion about going into executive session to discuss personnel.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into discussion.
Motion by Ms. Jones and second by everybody that this board will discuss going into executive session. Discuss personnel. All those in favor, please vote. Opposed, the same sign. Pass the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session.
It's been moved by Ms. Jones and second by everybody that this board will go into executive session to discuss the personnel. All those in favor, please sign vote. Opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it, the motion has been carried. We're now going into executive session.